Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by somebody interrupting my introduction, distracting me out the corner of my eye, which is of course Eli, Refracted Curvature, 10th Man, Brian's Logic, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Good morning, Nathan and audience.
Hello. Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Eli. Distracting me in my intro. Good to have you.
Hey.
Eli's coming. Eli's coming, Nathan. Watch out.
Yeah, I'm watching. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge? That's a horizon formerly known as Earth curvature.
If such a thing did exist, you wouldn't be able to get elevation angles from the surface of Earth.
Any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle from a curved adjacent?
No,
If such a thing existed, you'd be on the flat Earth.
Any evidence?
Prototad seems to think you can.
Say again, Brian, sorry.
Prototad seems to think that you can.
You can have an elevation angle with a curved adjacent.
Well, you can get one off a curved a curved Earth, let's just say.
Oh, so he assumes you can directly answer the question. You can acquire an elevation angle with a curved surface, giving you a curved adjacent on the triangle that you're using for triangulation.
No, he doesn't know what an elevation angle is. He doesn't seem to realise that it has a right angle in it, and the baseline of the triangle has to be along the surface of the Earth. He doesn't, no matter what way you explain it to him, he can't understand that.
And further to that, if you're at elevation, just so people don't dig you in the comments for this, right? It has to be parallel to a flat surface at 90 degrees. So if you're using a bubble sextant at 30,000 feet, for example, and you draw out a line that's horizontal from your position that you're measuring with the bubble, giving you that horizontal, then the 90 degree to the star that you measure with the same exact triangle is done at 30,000 feet, but will achieve the same ground position because you've got parallel lines running between the zenith of the plane through the plane to the ground and from the star that's being measured from the plane to the ground. So because those are both parallel lines, you can have 90 degree achieved all the way up at all altitudes. Now that's a reason why, I've laboured this point for a reason, we wouldn't give you the height of the star. If you think about it, that shouldn't work if you have a fixed position, should it? It should close the angle as you raise in height, but it doesn't. The way the heavens present themselves allows us the ability to have this 2-for-1 out of the angle measurement. That is to say that you're translating the angle in degrees to a certain number of miles on the ground. Not because you've got the height of the star, because you have this angular relationship with the ground when measuring it as a basic planar triangle on a flat plane. So you get a 2-for-1 out of the angle measurement, but that remains linear, if that's the right word, or remains consistent as you go up in height. You're still measuring the same angle, you're still measuring a 90 degree to the position in the air at that point. So if it was drawn off the map, you'd have two lines coming down, one from the star, one from the position being measured in an aeroplane. And then the line that is between the 90 degree angle that you're measuring and the plane would form an H shape in the depiction. So you've got a line halfway up those two parallel lines. Well, when you spread that out off a curved surface, they diverge. You no longer have the H shape. It gets wider and wider and wider as you go higher and higher and higher, and none of those will give you 90 degrees to do the trick. In other words, you can't do celestial navigation on a sphere. It does not work.
Yeah, Prototad doesn't seem to understand that when you're on a boat, you must use the horizon mirror, so you must also do dip and height of eye correction. The furthest I can get him to get to is that he'll say that the dip goes down to a geometric horizon, and then he stops there. He can't go past that point. He can't seem to understand that you're correcting the angle, so you end up with a 90 degrees underneath the boat at the surface of the water, and another 90 degrees at the GP of the celestial body. He can't get to there.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand what an elevation angle is.
Well, it's described as a height of eye correction, and as you say, you're bringing the angle down at the fixed point to make it 90. So you're widening the angle at the point of the GP of the star and lowering it to the ground. It's a height of eye. Well, however high you are off the deck, you lower it to that point. But that lowers the angle to correct it to the deck. They bastardise that and say, well, it's actually correcting for a geometric horizon you're not looking at in the horizon mirror, which is Brian's original point. It's like, well, no, you're not. You're lowering the angle down from your position to the deck, not lifting the angle from an invisible horizon we don't see in maths that we aren't using when we look at the actual horizon. There's no geometric horizon involved at all.
Yeah, he thinks, from what I could gather, from what he said the other day and what he's been saying to me on YouTube, he thinks that the dip to this geometric horizon suddenly comes up and becomes a celestial horizon and not the visible horizon. So it goes from a mathematical geometric horizon that he doesn't even realize is just mathematical to becoming a celestial horizon. But that is basically the same thing as using a bubble sextant, as what you stated from or described from an airplane, Nathan. So he's going from dip to geometric horizon, right, a mathematical horizon, to bubble sextant astronomical horizon, completely avoiding the surface of the Earth. Whereas that's not what happens on a boat. The horizon mirror goes to your visible horizon, the real horizon, and then you correct for the dip and height of eye, which brings the vertex of that angle down to the water underneath your boat, creating a 90-degree angle underneath the boat at the waterline. And the baseline of that 90-degree angle, that right angle triangle, the baseline, goes horizontally from the observer's position underneath the boat to the GP of the celestial body. Him and all the rest of them, they keep doing their best to avoid the surface, because the surface is flat and they know it, and it's the one place they're going to lose every time. They lose with the celestial, as what he calls a celestial horizon, as well, which is just the astronomical horizon, the eye line horizon. They lose with that too, but they don't realise. But every time they have to avoid the surface, because the surface, they know they can't show any curvature.
Well, they're describing something that's spent 2 years on their own volition telling us doesn't exist. So when they start describing this geometric horizon and saying there needs to be some sort of account made for it, the problem is that they've spent 2 years denying it so much that even normies like the guy yesterday come here and vehemently tell us that we haven't got a geometric horizon to see. It's not there, we don't see it, it's not there because of refraction. Well, if it's not there and we can't see it, we can't measure it, and you're not going to be accounting for it in some mathematics that doesn't actually involve it when you're looking at the actual horizon that presents itself and then doing a height of eye correction. There's no geometric horizon involved. We don't have one. And we've been told all day long how we don't have one. So while you're saying, Photoplad or whatever his name is telling us how we need to account for the geometric horizon, why is it that the guy yesterday got really angry because we just didn't understand how we don't have one and it's refracted? Don't we understand how it's all refracted and we don't have one? Like, well, we're being told left and right that we don't have one, but you're telling us in this maths that we should be counting for it when we do height of eye correction? No, definitely not.
Yeah, but what they don't understand, from what I can gather from this guy Prototat, what he doesn't understand, and this is the big disconnect, because they have to avoid the surface, because the surface is flat, right? When it comes to the changing of the vertex down to creating a 90-degree angle underneath the boat, what they're doing is his horizon mirror is going to the visible horizon. But then he's mathematically bringing the dip to a geometric horizon, which is just a mathematical horizon. And then he's going up and creating a celestial horizon, completely avoiding the surface. But what they're forgetting about is, if you were just going to use a celestial horizon, right, you would do that with a bubble sextant, and you wouldn't do that, you wouldn't do that on a boat. Because on a boat, you don't use a bubble sextant because they're not going to be steady. You need to use the visible horizon and correct for dip and height of eye down to the water underneath the boat. So what they're trying to do is, what he's talking about with his dip to this mathematical geometric horizon, what he's talking about there makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. If you're going to use a celestial horizon, why would you do a dip at all? You would never do a dip if you're going to use an astronomical horizon. You'd never do a dip. But if you're on a boat, you have
Stag, can you mute?
That's the second time he's been off mute like that.
Stag, Stagoli.
But yeah, if you're on a boat, you have to. You have to do dip and height of eye correction. You have to. Because you have to use the surface of the earth, the surface of the water underneath your boat. But what they're doing at the moment is they're adding in the dip to the mathematical geometric horizon just to give the appearance of doing a dip. But then they're trying to create this celestial horizon that avoids the surface. No, if you're going to use a celestial horizon, an astronomical horizon or whatever, then you're not going to use an horizon mirror. You're going to use a bubble sextant and not the other one. You're not going to do that. But you're not going to use a bubble sextant on a boat.
Right, but then they've got no reason to introduce this folly of a geometric horizon that isn't being cited. It's like if you're using a bubble sextant, you've established horizontal. That's all you need to do. There's no dip correction involved. Dip correction's only when you're measuring off the surface to the horizon, and then you correct for how high you are off the surface. So that's all definitely to do with the surface, but sod all to do with using a bubble sextant. But they want to use both. They want to say that we correct for a geometric horizon when we're establishing a horizontal, and that's all we need to do with a bubble sextant.
Yeah, and you never. Sorry, you don't correct for a dip. You don't do dip or height of eye with a bubble sextant. Sorry, John.
I was going to say, isn't there an easier way to do this? Like, really, we don't have to enter into that part of the argument. Like with Eratosthenes, all he did was assume a flat plane and take angle measurements using sticks and shadows. Then you don't have to, you're taking the observer out of it. You're not doing high to eye correction. You're just utilizing a flat plane to get an elevation angle. Would that simplify the argument for them any?
If they understand it, they just have to avoid the surface.
Right, let's move on.
That's why they're switching. Yeah.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
You're going to need a flat plane for that.
Sorry, remind me, are they going to need a flat plane for axial rotation?
Well, that involves an R value, and to get the R value, you're going to need flat Earth elevation angles to create a dual R value.
Gotcha. So to assert an axis and a radian value, you need an R value, and you need a flat plane to get it. Very good. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon? For all the space fundies out there.
No. I was waiting for someone else to say it because I've been talking a lot. No, absolutely not.
The guy yesterday was still under the misapprehension that he's got pictures of Earth from space.
Yeah, I've had people who are educated people who can prove their education to me in comments on YouTube still trying to claim gravity is holding the gas and making a gas pressure, even though things weigh more in a vacuum. It's just stupid. Like,
do those pictures from space show airplanes flying upside down and people antipodal?
There is no space. There is no pictures from there. It's a second law of
I know.
thermodynamics violation.
Yeah, I know. But if they were going to have pictures from space, we'd see half the people, half the buildings, half the air travel upside down to the other. But we never see that because there is no space.
That's the Narnia fallacy, though, isn't it?
Say again, John?
I said that's the Narnia fallacy, though. Like, if they could produce these upside down pictures of people, then Narnia is real.
If Narnia was real, then we would need to explain why the gas lamp burns without any pipes to it.
I can't explain why the gas, why it burns without any pipes to it. Therefore, Narnia is real. It's the Narnia fallacy, is what, you know.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Just before you go off,
Go on, Brian.
Because this will lead into the gravity question. As I said, this is with educated people I've dealt with, and they can prove their education on YouTube. When I asked them to prove gas pressure without a container, they start telling me about a force of gravity that creates a pressure gradient and gives us the most pressure at ground level, right? And I say, well, there's two problems with that. Number one, you need to show me a physical demonstration of this in a laboratory, at which time they go to, and I obviously throw in that what they're claiming is 107 years out of date, at which point they go to how they couldn't show that because they need a big enough mass, right, to create the gravity, number one, right? And secondly, I tell them, right, how everything weighs more in a vacuum, completely destroying their claim. And then they try and add in buoyancy, which is an up and not a down. So they do everything possible to avoid reality. The reality is they can't show their claims because their claims are a load of rubbish. And the claim they're making for gas pressure is 107 years out of date, even in their own rhetoric. And that is
it does lead nicely onto the question, which is, while those words and descriptions are very nice, any scientific evidence of gravity, that's the claim to be force that's not a force, actually the bending of pseudo-Riemannian force space-time in current rhetoric?
No. There's absolutely no evidence, scientific or otherwise, for gravity. The existence of.
Well, you would think cosmologists, astrophysics, that's where they would start with their viable hypothesis, wouldn't you?
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
I got one recently from an astronomer, Rob Parks is the guy's name. I've dealt with him on YouTube, and I meant to get back to him. I'll have to get back to the guy. But the one I got, it was all to do with things he was doing. There was a natural phenomenon, but there was no way of proving a cause, if you know what I'm saying, in what he told. I can't remember what he told me, so I'm not going to make it up.
Well, no. I mean, hopefully you can establish it. I mean, sounds promising. He just has to give us the viable hypothesis. That's independent variable, presumed cause, and the effect that he's observing. That's it. That's all he's got to give us. It's really easy. Just ask him. Just say to him, can you give us the independent and dependent variable? Because all we need is a viable hypothesis. We can formulate the null for him.
Yeah, I actually meant to go. I actually did ask him basically that, and I meant to go back, and I'm getting so much trolling comments. I lost his comment. I didn't lose it; it's there, but I need to go back through a couple of hundred comments.
Maybe email him.
So I will.
If you're prepared to put in the the extra bit of effort, dig out his email address and just drop him an email. Tell him that. Say, look, I was chatting with you in your own comments on your video, and all I need, because we have asked this question in excess of 1,000 times, almost daily. What is your, as an astrophysicist? Is he an astrophysicist? Did you say?
I think he's an astronomer.
As an astronomer, what's the hypothesis? All we need is the observed phenomena, that's your dependent variable, in case you don't know, and your presumed cause of it. Can you just tell me what those are? What's your presumed cause and what's the phenomena you're studying?
Okay, yeah, I'll get in contact with him because I think he did give me his email address before. What happened is this is the second time I've been getting to this point with him. I end up being brought away from that conversation, dealing with 100 trolls.
Speaking of 100 trolls, there's over 115 people watching, so please share the show. The only reason there is 115 plus people watching is because people share the show. So smash that share button. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
That's ridiculous. But my wife did ask me the other day, but where are all the professional people, like the scientists? How come they're not? I know what she was getting at. I said, "What are you trying to say? Like what we say don't count because it's not coming from somebody that claims to be a scientist? That Neil deGrasse Tyson's not saying this?"
That's celebrity, not science. So when she says,
Correct.
where are all the scientists? It's like, what is a scientist? Explain to her what science is. Say,
I
science.
did. I asked her that.
But you don't have to ask her, just tell her. Say, when you say scientist, you've been deceived into believing that men that tell you things are right because they've got this word on their badge, science, when science is actually the establishment of the cause of a naturally occurring phenomena. Well, when you understand that that's what science actually is, it makes you beg the question, or makes you question, when people say, I'm a scientist. Really? What is it that you have done to establish the cause of a natural phenomena in the instance that you're talking about? If you haven't, and you've just declared your allegiance to science, you're actually, by definition, a pseudoscientist. What's pseudoscience? Pseudoscience is a claim of science where there has not been an application of the scientific method. That's pseudoscience. So your Neil deGrasse Tyson is, by definition, if claimed to be science or a scientist, a pseudoscientist, because he hasn't applied the scientific method. So when he infers that he is science, science is right whether you like it or not, meaning I'm right whether you like it or not, because he hasn't done any science. None.
Yep.
Well, he did do
maybe.
he did do a little math to figure out why the field goal went in.
That's math. With an assumption of an Earth turn that doesn't affect the blimp or a plane or a hot air balloon or anything else that's not attached, like the football he's claiming's got the Earth turning underneath it. Yeah, that's still maths. Nonsensical maths that doesn't pad out in reality because of the contradictions I just listed.
Well, nobody in that field does the scientific method. It's, leaps of logic. It's guesswork, Nathan.
A quote from Michio Kaku, basically describing how they're not using the scientific method in any of these fields. And they're not, making them, if claimed to be science, pseudoscience. And that's the problem. We've all been deceived with pseudoscience after being taught how empirical that method, that science, is. So when you hear the word, you assume the person telling you something has empirical reasoning. And it's not empirical reasoning that makes something science. It's the establishment of cause and effect by way of systematic experimentation based on a hypothesis after observing a phenomena and assuming the cause of it, and then varying it to see if you were right. And if you are, you've done science. If you haven't, and you're claiming science, you're a pseudoscientist. That's basically what we've got.
You don't understand, Nathan. See, we have this heliocentric belief, and we've modeled it, and we calculate, and the math works.
Still math. Physics deals with the physical and natural world. Physics, physical. maths is abstract. It's just a description. It doesn't have to even describe something that's actually physically occurring. You can describe the bending of a fourth dimension. That would be gravity in its current terms. Well, you could describe anything.
Interesting.
Just invent a dimension and bend it.
Interesting thing about the maths is it's all built on a flat plane.
That's true.
What do you guys got against calculations? Come on now.
Nothing. I haven't got anything against calculations. Maths is fun. Hooray for maths. Meanwhile, we deal with physics on this show.
Well, I told my wife, you don't consider us professionals? Are you kidding me?
Don't consider us what, professional?
You didn't say you kidding me to our Neil?
I was
Professional
gonna
what?
because that's my only thing.
Professional what? The only thing I'm a professional is a YouTuber. That's it. That's my profession. But what do you mean? We're not professional.
No, that's not correct, Nathan.
Exactly.
No.
Tell him, Brian.
Yeah, that's not correct. Technically, you are a subject matter expert in the flat globe topic.
Okay.
Like it or not.
Fair enough.
Yeah. You know what? I told that story that happened to me. It's at least a couple of years old now. I was sitting in my friend's restaurant at the pizza bar, and this guy was there, and we started talking. He's a he's a dentist, has several offices, very educated man, family very educated, family went to universities. So we're sitting there and we're talking, and I throw some of the housekeeping questions on him, and I start describing things the way we've learned here on the show from subject matter experts that come on the show. And he looked at me, he says, my goodness, what university did you go to? I said, I didn't. He said, no, you know more than my siblings who went to universities. How do you know so much? So yeah, once we get the knowledge and we dig through self-study and we're able to discern, we are as much subject matter experts as they are. Claim to be. They, that is.
Alrighty then.
Yep.
I mean, do you need a diploma to tell the truth? Do you need a diploma to have an argument that stands the test of time? Can you measure an elevation angle with a curved adjacent?
Yeah, Nathan, could you not go into a university and hold a classroom, or whatever, an auditorium, to attention in there on this subject? Absolutely, you could.
Yeah, probably. So what? We do that daily on this show.
That's right. You do it daily here.
Yeah, so you're subject matter expert.
I agree with you in principle because I label the show education, and that's what I consider it.
Who actually first brought this to my attention was Adam Meakin. Adam said, no, he said to me, only just before Christmas there, he said, no, you're a subject matter expert. When we're talking about getting paid per debates, he said, one of the things you're not taking into account is that you're actually a subject matter expert. So you should be getting paid, not just because you don't want your time wasted, because you're giving your time as a subject matter expert. And he's right, I am. And then I don't feel bad about claiming it at all.
You're not claiming jack. I'm not giving you anything.
Well, I'm waiting for money from you.
What Brian actually means, just to fill the audience who may not be aware, is a description of the kind of guy like yesterday that doesn't want to actually listen to the response. They want to tell you you're an idiot. Now, it's really easy to say to somebody like Brian, come on my show, I'm going to prove how wrong you are. And for Brian to turn around and go, what's in it for me, precisely? And the answer is absolutely nothing. But they need some form of pain relief, and they get it by berating flat earthers on their own channels and calling it neutral debate. That's what they get a bit of pain relief from. And in this example, Adam's saying to Brian, well, if you're being paid, then if you just get talked through and you just sit there and you just collect your fee, you go, okay, that's your problem. You paid me because presumably you wanted to hear what I had to say. Now, if you don't want to hear what I've got to say, then there's an ulterior motive to having me on your show, isn't there? And you don't want to hear what I've got to say. You want to tell me I'm wrong for free. Fuck you. That's my attitude in that regard. Yeah, and if they do come to me, I'll say, I'll send you an invoice if you like. You can have a quote off me, you know. And are any of them in ever a position to say, no, we actually want to? Like Vice did, pay expenses and literally give you money so that you can have some of their time, or vice versa, I should say. Well, no. Of course not. They just want to berate you for free. Sod them. Yeah, you can pay me. Then you'll be more interested in listening to what I actually have to say. And if you just want to pay to berate me, I'll take the money and you can, shut me up for 2 hours and I'll take the money at the end of it and be very pleased that you've paid me. And I haven't to do much work or talk much because you've just shouted me down for your entire 2 hours that you paid for. Oh, well, good for you. Money well spent, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly, Nathan, because if you're going to go into a debate with someone, whether they behave like the guy yesterday does, or they behave more like, let's just say, like Ruhif or Kat, someone who's more calm and calculated. In the end of the day, no matter what you go through, you whatever you say, whatever you prove, whatever rebuttal you give, it's all going to be thrown out the window because they're going to go back and use the same arguments that you might have rebutted them against in a different debate, because they're not going. It comes down to a lack of acceptance of reality. There's a worldview being held by our opposition, and to accept reality is to leave go of the worldview. So they're not going to do that. So if you're going to debate, even someone like Ruhif, who will be very calm, and you'll spend 2 hours having a very detailed debate against, right, where there'll be lots of mathematics and different things coming into it. At the end of that debate, your 2 hours is still wasted because there will be no progress in the situation. Because Ruhif will have that same exact debate with someone else, and he'll use the same points he used in the debate against you. He might change them around, whatever. I'm only saying this because Ruhif is one of the smarter of them. So the point I'm making is even against someone who will be calm and will be calculated, that person, you're still wasting your time because there's going to be no progress. Your 2 hours that you put in, any rebuttal you give, any argument you make, is not going to be accepted, and it's not going to be, it's not going to be thought about. They're just going to whitewash it away and throw it out the window and go to a different debate and use the same tactics and the same arguments that they use against you. So why should you not get paid? If you're going to spend 2 hours of your life being wasted, you could have watched a movie.
Yeah, I totally agree. And from the point of view of people who are like, well, you're not paying attention to this argument, this really great argument I've got. I've got a door that opens daily. You can just walk through it and present it. During a period of time that I'm getting paid, smash the super chat. There is a financial motivation to doing this. But is there any financial motivation to going over to your show to be berated for 2 hours and ignored? Because it's not that you want them to accept your argument. You want them to engage in a discussion. And it's that they won't acknowledge your argument. So when you put to somebody like yesterday that their acquisition of the refraction value they use has an R that they can't get if they refract it, in other words, you detail the paradox to them, you would hope that they'd in some form or another acknowledge the paradox. Like me paraphrasing back the argument that we're contesting. When we contest it, even if we've paraphrased back the argument, normally that's where you get interrupted because you've just literally repackaged what they've claimed. And they want to stop you at the moment that you repackage and rephrase their claim in the positive assertion so that you can then refute it. They'll completely ignore the refutation. Maybe restate the claim again 18 to 20 times so that the refutation's never addressed or acknowledged. You're not asking or demanding in any debate that someone accepts your position. You're not. But you do expect in a reasonable discussion that someone acknowledges your point or your refutation and then challenges it. That's the point of a debate. So you're saying I can't refract the horizon with R because I can't measure R because I measure it at the horizon. No, I can because I can come up with an argument for why you can do the thing that's being refuted, but they won't acknowledge it.
Exactly.
Well, hold on. Y'all are begging the question a little bit. To have a debate, you have to have a point of contention. At this juncture, we're all in agreement about elevation angles. There's no point of contention anymore.
But we're not. We're not actually, because our opponents are now like in the process of claiming that there is no 90-degree angle.
Careful. No. Don't buy that. That's not them fighting us. That's them fighting the process of celestial navigation. So don't get confused, because they've attempted at this stage, Brian, unless you latch onto this. Hopefully my words will hit home. So long as they can reposition what is actually celestial navigation to being flat earther, use of 90, then they can argue against it without the audience realising that they're not actually fighting us anymore. Yeah, they're fighting how it is done. Not by flat earthers. These aren't flat earth references. They're fighting against their own version of it if they want to challenge anything we present. Thanks to 10th and his fastidious use of globe earth rhetoric with flat earth elevation angles being measured. Now, yeah, it's flat earth elevation angles proving our argument, but that is just that method, not our claim about the method that's wrong.
No, absolutely, Nathan, you are correct. The guy who's doing this at the moment, one of the guys doing this at the moment, he had to be pulled on the straw man arguments he was using here a few days ago, when he was claiming this is how ye do it. It's like, no, it's not how we do it, it's how celestial navigation do it. And I've had to do the same exact thing with him since then on YouTube comments, where I've had to correct him and state, no, this is not my claim, this is celestial navigation. So what you said is exactly what's going on. They're trying to repackage the reality and make it seem like we have a version and they have a version. No, there is one version, and it's the celestial navigation version, and that's the version that we are presenting, not our own version.
Shh, don't say 90.
Well, that's the thing, though. If all they want is to spout delusion at you and deny their own claims, they're not interested in a debate. Don't call it a debate, because that's not what it is. There is no debate to be had.
Yeah, exactly. That's why people are like, why did you say that you hate this guy? It's like, because at the moment that you start entering into a discussion where you are arguing against celestial navigation, repositioning it as a flat earth claim, which it isn't, and denying the tenets of the celestial navigation, you just become a scummy, lying pig. And you're not entering into debate. You're denying the premises of a function that is done the world over and calling it a flat earth claim, and then saying it doesn't work like that. That being the way it's documented as working, yeah, it does. It's not my claim, it's just how it is, and it just proves we're on a flat plane. You don't have to like it, but don't reposition it as mine and say it's wrong.
Well, just looking there at what you have at the moment being presented, you have the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. At the moment, I think we're very much in the anger area of that, because I have noticed in recent times, in the past recent months, that there's been more threats of violence being sent towards me, and innuendos about violence sent towards me in YouTube and places. And you then yesterday, the guy was threatening to come through the screen and punch you and all this. So I reckon they spent a long time in the denial phase, and now they're heading into the anger phase. And then after that, there's going to be bargaining.
No, we're square in the bargaining stage. So denial is these stupid flat earthers. Anger is how dare they show me something that I can't get around, when consensus shows that that's not going to be the case, even though I can't find an example of how it isn't. That's anger. Then they get on the show. We are right here. We're at the bargaining stage. Yeah? And then who is it, the guy that came and then disappeared because he couldn't cope with it? Was it, Headmaster or something like that?
Oh, that was
Z-Man.
Whoever.
Yeah.
There's been several examples of people who we've been informed after the fact that they can't cope with arguing with us flat earthers. And they get very, what's the next step? depressed. Yeah? They go away in a mope because they can't cope with it, because they can't get around the arguments. They haven't accepted that Earth's flat. They've denied it, got very angry about it, argued the toss with us, and then gone away and got depressed about it. You know what's next, lads? Acceptance. And that's where we're at now. We've seen all of these stages. But now we're at the, as John keeps highlighting daily, and I'm grateful that he does, at the acceptance stage. You have to accept that it's flat to get an elevation angle, don't you? And if you've been through all these phases, through 2015, say, for the sake of argument, for the die-hard anti-flat earthers, yeah, you're at that stage now. It's acceptance. But you've already got angry about it, haven't you? Yeah, you've already argued, you've already been on flat earth debate and left, and had a bit of depression, reiterated, maybe regressed to anger, back to denial again when you're talking about geometric horizons, Ruhif. Yeah, they regress and jump through these stages, but we're still in the debate, the acceptance stage. You've got to accept a flat earth to move forward in this discussion. To regress, you've got to be here. You've got to accept a flat plane to get elevation angles, to then be angry with us and then bargain again, and then you're back to acceptance eventually.
Yeah, you're right. I was wrong.
I'm not saying you're wrong. It was an excellent point. It's your point. They're along these roads. I've kept these slides for a long time because all of them are personal, and every so often one of them will get paused on like this one. But, you know, that is what we're dealing with. We're slap bang in the middle. We're at the bargaining stage. Flat Earth debate is an evergreen subject until there is no heliocentrism. That'll never happen in my lifetime.
Nathan, I've got a teaching slide up right now that will explain what's going on. It's in Master B. Tell me when you have it on the screen.
Just give me 30 seconds.
Yeah, no problem.
It's in Master B. Celestial navigation theory, right?
Yeah. So when I was researching this topic, this is what I would run across. Let me just read it for the audience, and then you guys see if you could tear it apart where you see the fallacious argument and the violation of the law of non-contradiction. And this is why when they draw pictures, it even gets worse. Here we go. Okay, you've measured the altitude of the sun and written down the time you did it. Why? Look at figure 3.1. Whenever you take a sight of the sun, you are 1 point of a large right triangle. The difference between a conventional right triangle and this one is the base of yours is not a straight line, but an arc. It's not just an old arc. This particular arc is the great circle track between you and the point on the Earth that is directly under the sun, a point known as the geographical position, but usually written as an abbreviation, GP. Great circle arcs can be measured in degrees, and it is a happy fact that in this bulgy-bottomed triangle, the number of degrees in the bulge equals the number of degrees in the angle at the apex. Because the two acute angles of a right triangle add up to 90 degrees, remember, the angle of a triangle must add up to 180 degrees, and a right angle equals 90 degrees. The angle at the apex must equal 90 minus the angle at your point, the angle you measured with your sextant. So, by taking a sextant shot of the sun and subtracting the angle from 90, you can find out how far you are from that point on the Earth that is directly underneath the sun. Isn't it amazing what you can do with a couple of mirrors and a little trig?
It's great.
There's no trig. Sorry, Nathan.
No, you launch into the cry of the anti-flat earther, Brian. Feel free.
Yeah, there is no trig being used there whatsoever. Elevation angles, right triangles, do not have curved baselines. So there is no great circle routes being used. There is only straight lines, horizontals, for the baselines. There is no trig. That's what you just read out there, Tent, is complete and utter nonsense. You could not use a right triangle in that position, and no right triangle has a curved baseline.
They even go as far as saying it's got to add up to 180.
Who said this?
Celestial navigation in a nutshell. They all say this.
Yeah, but who put out this?
This is the
reference you
book
have?
called This is a book called Celestial Navigation in a nutshell. But they all say this. This is what I'm running across. This is what I'm trying to say to the audience: is that when you read these books on celestial navigation, they will have pictures of a tangent plane all the way out into space until the sun is directly over it, and say that's working on a curved adjacent, which it's not. Then they have it in a written form like this, which is total horsebunk. I mean, this is nonsense. But they'll read it and they'll say, oh, okay. But at the same time they're reading it, you subtract from 90. They can never be over 180. And it takes 3 straight lines to be a 180 triangle. I mean, this is nonsense.
Yeah, you can't. There is no angle to be had when you have a straight line and a curved line. There is no angle. You can't create an angle. Even AutoCAD won't do it.
How could he say in one sentence it's bulgy at the bottom and then says it's got to add up to 180?
Yeah, it's not a triangle then. It's not an angle, a right angle triangle. It's just contradiction of reality.
Yeah, there can't be 100. There can't be 180 degrees on a curved surface. That's incorrect.
Or on a triangle with a curved adjacent, you mean?
Well, no, I'm saying 180 degrees is a straight line. There can't be a straight line on a curved surface.
Why would you ever do dip and height of y correction if you're going to do that? Why would you be bothered? No matter, even if you're 100 foot off the water on an aircraft carrier, why would you ever do it? If that was what was reality, you'd never do it. The 100 foot wouldn't matter.
Before I ask the next housekeeping question, I just want to say almost 150 people watching, so somebody's definitely shared the show. Thank you very much if you smashed the share button. If you haven't,
Nathan,
smash the share button. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Hang on, Nathan. This is a very important part. I can put probably hundreds of these up. When someone reads between the lines and says, okay, I have a book on celestial navigation, and then comes on your show and says, it's not the way you guys say it. I just read a book and it says it can work with a bulgy bottom. You say, can I see the citation? And they put the citation. What's the first thing you would bring up if they brought the citation?
Oh, that's how you get an elevation angle from a curved surface.
And then the citation itself says what? Minus from 90, 180 total. It's a right triangle. Get it?
Yeah.
Their own,
I mean,
their own books destroyed them.
Sure. I mean, what we've got is an anti-flat Earth response from somebody. I don't know if he's anti-flat Earth or not in the chat. So, Glenn Satch or Salsh, don't know how to say your name. I'm sorry, Glenn. They apply it to a spherical triangle, which can be 270 degrees. That's what he's saying. Now,
Well,
no, they don't.
Then why did he say 180?
Hold on, Ted. Even in the double-speak rhetoric that's being discussed between Brian and 10th now, no, they don't. Because that isn't how it's done. You're doing planar trig. You're not doing spherical trig.
I'll pull all this apart right now. The 2 points that they're claiming along their great circle route, those points are angles from equatorial plane. That's where they're originating from. So even those points on their great circle route that they're trying to claim within that contradiction there, those 2 points are angles from the equatorial plane. And how come they have an equatorial plane? Because they have to take reality, which is what happens on the surface of Earth, and then put it into a mathematical center of a circle.
Okay, stop a second.
And that's why.
Stop a sec. Can somebody dig out an image and post it in Master B of the equatorial plane, please? And I want to stay on this point. I know I've just asked any distance to the sun, but we might get there in this discussion. So what Brian's just highlighted is an equatorial plane. That's a flat plane if you slice in half a circle on a diagram that's depicting a sphere. And then you end up with this flat baseline in the middle that you can take to be the angles that we'll actually be using when we're describing these spherical processes. The angle acquisition point. Now that point is at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth that's solid. But what's actually occurring on that plane, that's a flat surface, is an angle measurement to the celestial sky, curving in the same arc radius that you would have on the angle measuring device. So if we say sextant, you can draw out on the ground, this celestial plane, 180 degree. Has somebody done it? Perfect. Thank you, whoever posted that. On this flat surface, yeah, equatorial plane, obviously a slice at the equator, you can make an angle measurement out to the stars. And when you do that, the angle that you're actually measuring is where they've projected the land onto after the measurement's taken on this flat plane. So when they say, oh, well, we're taking this measurement from the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth and we've got all the lines from the stars coming in parallel at an infinite distance, well, what they're actually doing is taking the measurement from here on a flat surface, and the stars are projected out onto what will then be later described as the surface on the outside edge where the stars were. But this is where the measurement's taken from, on a flat plane. Go on, Brian, can you add to that?
Yeah, I will, Nathan. Their great circle routes all start with, even though they don't all use longitude lines, they all start with the longitude lines. And we know the distance along the longitude lines from the GP of Polaris due to flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. So all these points are just back-engineered. All the points along these longitude lines are just back-engineered to the center of a pre-assumed globe Earth. And that's all that's happening. No matter what they try and claim as far as a great circle route goes, they are using angles from a flat plane, which is the equatorial plane, to get those points. And how did they know how did they know to have a polar radius of 3950 and an equatorial radius of 3963 for their globe? It's because it has to be that to back engineer from flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. So every bit of the globe starts with flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris, and then those angles are back engineered from the center of a globe Earth at the equatorial plane to the points on the surface that they need to meet.
It's labelled. Here we go, Brian. It's the only thing labelled. So in terms of your position, if you're on the ground, and this is where you're going to be taking these angle measurements from, in this equatorial plane, and it says centre of Earth. Okay, but then what's the description above it when it says North Pole? 90 degrees north latitude. Well, what's 90 degrees? 90 degrees from you measuring it at the centre of Earth? No. As I described earlier, you can take this point, oh, what do you know? It's got a 90 labelled at it, as being 90 degree measurement to the North Pole star from the surface. Well, how does that measure up with what we've got on here? Well, we've got this flat plane, and we've got the centre, which is where they say the measurement comes from, centre of a rock. But then, if you're taking the measurement, you can actually assume that there's a little man standing here. And what's he measuring? Well, he's measuring North Pole at 90 degrees to his position. And then all of these angle measurements that the man actually stood here is taking match up with an arc on his measuring tool. And each of those degrees are then labelled out onto the land. But the measurement's coming from here, on a flat plane. Yeah? They've just translated out the celestial sky and the angles to the stars, and then said, well, that's actually the land projected up from the only point it's capable of being measured from, where you'd be standing holding this tool with an arc on it. Well, that doesn't make the land the arc. It makes the measurement you take from this flat plane match up with the transposition from that flat plane with these angles that can only be taken on a flat plane to the arc of the surface that they projected up to, making the ground curved. It isn't. The only way you got this curve was by taking measurements from here on this flat plane, and the only way you could get those measurements to the angles, including the North Pole, would be from a flat plane. So your globe requires a flat plane to make the claim of a globe. It's nuts. Can't believe I'm saying it, but it's true. There it is. This is the flat plane you'd measure the angles off. There's 90 degrees with the North Pole above you at the centre of Earth. No, standing on the surface, Makes this the surface, the flat bit.
Yeah, and when they say arc, they try to beg the question with the term arc. But arc is arc of the sextant. The sextant uses a 60 degree, which is 1/6 of a circle. And it's when you move the index arm through an arc, through the arc of that 60 degrees. The same with a protractor, it has an arc. But that's within the tools. It's not that the ground is an arc or the sky is an arc.
Right,
It's nothing to do with the surface
So
of
in
the
here, that arc is you at the centre holding a sextant with the arc of the sextant. I'm going to exaggerate it and say it's like massive. You know, you're holding it like this is the arc of your tool. Well, what are they describing? They're saying North Pole at 90 degrees. Yeah? So 90 degrees on the arc of your tool is the straight line pointing up and the straight line pointing out. So you've got a 90 here. Well, that's you holding a tool on this flat plane. And the arc is the transposition of the arc of the tool to be the land when the land isn't where you've just took the angle measurement from. You can't stand at the centre of Earth to make that work. You can only stand on the surface. And if you were stood on the surface, it would be a map on this bit with measurements up to the heavens of the stars and the angles there too. Thank you very much, whoever's just posted that. 10th. Go ahead, 10th. Did you just want to go through this? Quartermaster 3 and 2.
Yeah, I was on. My mic was off. Yes, Quartermaster 3 and 2. So there's an illustration of a GP. This is a top view. So you're looking, I mean, you're the star looking down at the Earth here. So you're directly over the GP as a star. And now you're trying to figure out your line of position and intercept method, the radius from the GP to the observer with the sextant. Look to the left. Right there, it says, from the star's GP, right after the first paragraph, basically. From the star's GP, any number of circles of equal altitude spread out as altitude decreases with distance of observer from the GP. The maximum limit, of course, would be 5,400 nautical miles, 5,400 minutes of arc from the GP, at which point the star would be seen on the horizon at 0 altitude. Altitude at this limit would have decreased in the entire 90 degrees, 5,400 minutes. Now let's go back to fixes. It would seem that we could use the intersection of a circle of equal altitude of one body with the circle of equal altitude of another to obtain a fix by celestial navigation. So if you had two circles of equal altitudes where they cross at two sections, you're at one of those points. All right. After all, we can locate the latitude and longitude of the GP by the declination and the GHA of the star by subtracting the altitude from 90 degrees and changing the result to nautical miles. We should be able to draw a circle of equal altitude around the GP. What do you subtract from?
90.
The minute I saw 90 in my research, I knew it was over. Everywhere you read, you must subtract from 90. You must minus from 90. And what is a 90?
Flat plane measurement that you can only get if the Earth isn't curved.
Well, I looked up angles, and it's a perpendicular relationship, a flat baseline and a vertical line that meet to give you that little box called a 90. How could that ever be on the curved surface?
Can't. Earth is flat. With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you. Smashed the PayPal link, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. Also, another massive thank you to today's Discord and G Plus panel for making today's live show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I'll see you all in the next video.
a lucky day.